So let's take a look at photosynthesis now. So what is photosynthesis? It's just the process that's going to convert light energy into chemical energy. And the chemical energy we're referring to is just the chemical energy that's stored in the chemical bonds that's in the carbohydrates that are made in photosynthesis. And here's the chemical reaction that you should know for the exam. So we've got carbon dioxide and water, and we're going to combine those and use the help of some light energy to make glucose or another carbohydrate, and then oxygen will be a byproduct. And notice that this is an anabolic reaction because we're taking smaller molecules and we're making a much larger molecule, so that's an anabolic reaction. And anabolic reactions require energy to be able to do these. So that means that they're endergonic. So photosynthesis is going to be an endergonic process, meaning that it requires energy to do it. So that energy is going to come from light energy. So that's where we get the energy to do photosynthesis. And then what do you notice about the reverse reaction? So if we start over here on the right and we do the reverse direction, hopefully you recognize that as cellular respiration. So remember, in cellular respiration, we take our food like glucose and we need oxygen to do this. That's why we have to keep breathing. And we're going to break apart our glucose, our food, and the carbon in the glucose all ends up as carbon dioxide. And then we're going to put our electrons that we rip off of glucose onto oxygen, our final electron acceptor at the end of the electron transport chain, and then that's where the water ends up coming from. So as we said before, photosynthesis and cellular respiration are joined together. So photosynthesis, we're going to use carbon dioxide and water and use light energy to help us with these anabolic reactions and make their own food, make carbohydrate, a larger molecule here, and then oxygen will be the byproduct. And then the mitochondria in cellular respiration will take the food, the carbohydrate, and break that apart, and all the carbons become carbon dioxide, and then oxygen is our final electron acceptor, and then that's where the water comes from. And then remember that the energy that was stored in the food, the carbohydrate, we're going to capture that energy and make ATP. And then these waste products from the mitochondria, the carbon dioxide and water, is exactly what the chloroplast needs to do photosynthesis. All right, so there are two steps to photosynthesis. So the photo part of photosynthesis, photo refers to light, and this will be the light-dependent reactions. And in the light-dependent reactions, we're going to be converting light energy to the chemical energy of ATP and an electron carrier called NADPH. So this is like NADH that's used in cellular respiration. It's just there's a phosphate group stuck onto the electron carrier. We're also going to be splitting water apart, and we need to get some electrons from the water, and what's left will be oxygen, and that's why oxygen will be a byproduct that's produced. And it's also important to note where the light-dependent reactions are occurring, and they're going to be occurring in the thylakoid membranes of the chloroplast. So we'll take a look at a picture in just a second. You also will sometimes just hear the light-dependent reactions just called the light reactions. Okay, and next we have the synthesis part of photosynthesis, and synthesis just means to make. So in the Calvin cycle, this is where we're going to take carbon dioxide and use it to make glucose or some other carbohydrate. And we're going to use ATP and NADPH that we made in the light-dependent reactions to do the Calvin cycle. And this is going to occur in the stroma of the chloroplast. So we'll explain where the stroma is in just a second. Okay, so I would in general know what's going on in each of these two parts of photosynthesis and where they're occurring. So the light-dependent reaction, you're just going to capture the light energy. You're going to be making the ATP and NADPH, and this is also where the oxygen comes from. And then the Calvin cycle, I just remember Calvin's a sweet old guy, and so that's how I remember that Calvin is sweet. This is where you're going to take the carbon dioxide and make a sugar or a carbohydrate. So this picture represents a chloroplast, which we find in our plant cells and algae cells. And inside the chloroplast, we have these little green discs, which are called thylakoids. And they're green because they have chlorophyll in them. And chlorophyll is the molecule that will absorb the light energy. And the light reactions are going to be occurring in the thylakoid membranes. And you can see that the light reactions, we're going to absorb the light energy and then convert that light energy into ATP and our electron carrier NADPH. We're also going to be splitting water and making our byproduct oxygen in our light reactions. And then the Calvin cycle is going to occur in the stroma. So the stroma is going to be outside the thylakoids, just kind of in this fluid part of the chloroplast. And the Calvin cycle, we're going to be taking carbon dioxide gas from the air, and we're going to be fixing it, just meaning we're going to make it part of an organic molecule, and then eventually making it into a carbohydrate or a sugar. And we also need to use the ATP, the energy from the light reactions, and the electrons from the NADPH from the light reactions to do the Calvin cycle.